Yo, what's good with y'all, man? Welcome back to the channel, bro. It's Swervo Hoops, and today we about to be talking about some hoops, man. With the trade deadline approaching so soon upon us, as most of us know, as an NBA team and organization, being a middle-of-the-pack type of team in the NBA is probably one of the worst positions you really want to be in terms of your conference, because not only does that take you out of getting a high pick in the draft, even though, yes, they did change the system and format to that, but it also leaves you in this gray area of mediocrity. It's like you're not good enough to really contend for anything meaningful, and then you're also not bad enough to really get a big name prospect in the draft. And with that being said as well, depending on where your city is located, it can affect attendance, maybe depending on what type of fan base you got. And then also in terms of getting free agents to go there if you're a small market city. It's a lot of things that can just really be affected if you're really just a middle of the pack type of team in the NBA, you feel me? Now don't get me wrong, the draft is what it is, so you really could just get a star player with like the 20th pick for all we know. But with that being said, I'm not gonna get too deep into that. It's very up in the air about who might fuck around and get traded. Like, we still got Ben Simmons in Philly. There was a whole bunch of Kyrie trade rumors that was circling around not too long ago. And then, yeah, there's a lot of players that just ain't safe. But I do want to say, if you're new to the channel, subscribe to the channel, bro. We get litty in this section, you heard? And if you're already subscribed, I appreciate it deeply. Like the video if you can. All of that being said, let's get into the video and the first team I got coming up. First team we got coming up is the Atlanta Hawks, and as of right now, they are at the 10th spot in the Eastern Conference. Now, despite them being one of the best offensive teams and with the second best offensive rating in the league right now, they take care of the ball very well, as they are at the bottom of the league in terms of fewest turnovers committed as a team per game. And Trae Young is having his most efficient season across the board, definitely having an all-star season. And on top of that, as a team as a whole, they are also shooting really efficiently from three. I think they are like second or third in terms of three-point percentage per game as a team. Now, don't get me wrong, this team might be all good on offense, but they can definitely use some boosts to the defense, as they are sitting at the 23rd spot for steals per game and amongst one of the worst defensive rated teams in the league, as they are 27th in defensive rating. Although Atlanta is already one of the better offensive teams in the league, with Trae Young being their primary ball handler, I do feel that this offense is missing other ball handlers to help relieve some of that duty off of Trae Young in certain games. I would suggest Victor Oladipo, depending on how he bounces back from his injury and if he can return to being an above-average perimeter defender for them. Or if they want to go for someone who's a bit more proven defensively and has shown case that he's one of the better defenders in today's league, I would say go for Marcus Smart. He can serve as like a secondary playmaker for this team. Not only does Smart already have the reputation of being a defensive pest, but his contract is also very manageable and tradable too. Atlanta has some defensive talent on this team. DeAndre Hunter is a pretty solid perimeter defender, pretty versatile defender himself as well. Clint Capella, who has served as a really good rim protector and shot blocker for them. I ain't gonna lie, even though it's not a large enough sample size to really go off of, Okongwu has been really solid for them. I mean, he's very efficient at scoring around the basket. Okongwu is shooting 74% from the field this season, and he is also 8th in blocks per game in the league this year and only averaging about under 24 minutes a game. They have a lot of three-point threats out there. Trae Young is a pretty solid facilitator. Like I said, they could use more playmakers, but I do believe that getting taller wing defenders or just more better defensive players around Trae Young should be the focus for them with this upcoming trade deadline, for them to make the next level jump that they need to make. Next team we got coming up, we got the Lakers. And speaking of great offensive teams, this team is not one of them. Not only are they 24th in terms of offensive rating, but they are also sitting at the 5th spot in the league in terms of turnovers committed by a team per game. And you would think with a team with so many veterans on it would have a lot more experience on both sides of the floor at least. But it just seems like when you watch the Lakers play, it be seeming like there's a strong lack of effort and lack of chemistry, to be honest with you, on both sides of the floor. On offense, it seemed like players don't know where to be at. And most times, if it's not LeBron or Westbrook with the ball, most players are just standing around the perimeter, just ball watching. And on top of that is the inconsistency from the perimeter shooters they have as well. And on the other side of the floor on defense, it seemed like it's just a lot of miscommunication or rotation, switches, help defense. When it was Westbrook and LeBron in the lineup, being that they're two ball-dominant players who aren't really known for being the best off the ball. And with a roster that doesn't have the most consistent spot-up shooters, I mean, you can see how an offense like that can get ugly real fast. And especially because Westbrook and LeBron both have strengths in similar parts of the game. They both rely on the attention they get from the defense when they drive into the paint, and based on the defensive attention they receive, they either finish at the basket or create shots for others. The Lakers have experimented many different things to accommodate for the offense being so awkward this season. They've had Westbrook playing more off the ball so he can get some cuts to the basket. They have him playing around the dunker spot or involved in more post-up situations so he could finish around the rim. And even with him finishing at career low percentages around the rim, it makes it harder for them to even use him for the benefits he was supposed to provide for this team. They've tried running LeBron at center while AD was out. The Lakers tried running this small ball lineup to, I guess, resemble the lineup that Houston had ran when Westbrook was playing with them back in 2020. And though he did have his best stretch of games when Harden was sitting out with an injury that season, the Lakers aren't seeing as much success, even with the decreased usage rate in Russell Westbrook's play and the increased jump shots taken from LeBron this year, as he is sitting on a career-high 3-point attempts per game this season. But it's obviously not working, as the Lakers are in contention for a play-in spot right now at this point in the season. And it's not to say that they won't make the playoffs or anything, but it's looking mighty questionable. I mean, to be honest, there is a lot to dissect with how bad the Lakers season has been going this year in terms of on the offensive side and on the defensive side. But the fact of the matter is that we're over 50 games into this season, and they're still not looking like a championship contending team. Now, I would say the only possible chance they really have of being somewhat of a threat is with them getting better role players on this bench to make up for the lack of depth they have on this team. But being that Westbrook's contract is so huge and they kind of locked themselves into that for at least the next 2 years, and because of that contract, it really makes it harder for them to have valuable assets to trade to really address the weaknesses they have in their roster. A useful role player that I think could benefit them would be a player like Gary Harris from the Orlando Magic. Now, he isn't the most consistent on offense, but I do think he can serve as a solid 3-and-D player for them, being that he has had moments in his career being an above-average perimeter defender. Another player I feel like they can go to search for is Malik Beasley from the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm not sure what his availability is or what his trade market would be, being that Minnesota is having a pretty solid season this year as they are trying to make a playoffs run. But at the same time, being that Towns, Russell, and Edwards is the future, which the Timberwolves seem to be moving on, and them being the 3 primary scoring options, Malik Beasley's role on this team has significantly changed. And due to his shooting struggles this season, I'm kind of doubting whether the Timberwolves are really looking to move forward in his direction. And though he does show promising potential as an all-around scorer in this league, I mean, if they can get a good return in for him, I don't see why they wouldn't trade him. Next up, we got the Boston Celtics, and I think most of us can agree that there was really higher expectations for a group like this. With them having 2 young stars in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and with them only improving, and with them having a decent, solid core of defensive players as they list 4th in the league in defensive rating, as opposed to the previous 2 teams I spoke about before the Celtics, their problem isn't really their defense, it's really their offense, and it's something that they've been criticized for a lot more this season. Another thing the Celtics were often criticized for at the point guard position was the fact that they never really had a true facilitator. Over the offseason, they didn't really do anything to really patch that roll up, as they signed Dennis Schroeder, who was a skilled guard but is very inconsistent on offense. Al Horford and Robert Williams are very underrated passers for their position. I would say their best playmaker on this team is Marcus Smart. And even bringing up Marcus Smart, he's another one who criticized this team for how much of an isolation-heavy offense they have, being that their 2 best players are 2 tall wing players who get buckets on their own. Now, though this weakness did lead to some trade rumors to begin the season, and the Celtics did quiet those rumors, we have to remember that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are 2 young star players and have plenty of season and career left in them. But the fact of the matter is that those 2, despite how great they are,
they do struggle playing off of each other in the Celtics offense. It seems like when either one of them get the ball, they're more so trying to make a play for themselves than playing off of each other or trying to make a play for their teammates. As of late, not only are the Celtics on a winning streak, but Tatum and Brown have done a better job at distributing the ball and finding their teammates. I don't like to get too deep into analytics, but the on and off numbers between Tatum and Brown would suggest they be more efficient on offense without the other one being in the game. And I'm not over here hard pressed saying that they should trade one of them. I do believe that they can make it work, but it just is what it is. Now, I do believe 2 point guards that they could go for before the trade deadline hits. I do believe if they can make a move in acquiring Tyus Jones from the Grizzlies or Monte Morris from the Nuggets, I believe either one of those point guards can have a crucial role on this team, because not only are they low usage point guards who are very good at controlling the ball, but they can facilitate an offense whether they are starting or coming off of the bench. After being a 4th seed in the Eastern Conference last year and making a playoff run, unfortunately, it did end in the first round, but this year we assume that at least they'd be in some type of contention to make the playoffs. And although that isn't out of the picture completely yet, as they're sitting at the 12th spot in the Eastern Conference with the potential to make a play-in run, I mean, they kept the same core group of players that were really solid for them last season. And they even added some extra offensive firepower with Kemba and Evan Fournier, but they haven't really been living up to the best expectations, with Fournier being inconsistent on offense. Kemba, it's a similar thing, and even though when Tibbs was starting to give him minutes in the starting lineup, he was proving that he was worthy of the minutes, but then his role on offense got confusing. He went down with an injury again, and he's just been an overall defensive liability for them, so his minutes have just been inconsistent with him being in and out of the rotation. I don't know if I'm alone here, but I feel like most people assume that Cameron Reddish was going to get more minutes when he got traded here, but knowing how Tibbs coaches his younger players, it's not really that easy to get minutes. They do have young players in Quentin Grimes and Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin getting more minutes this year and is a hustle hard player, but Tibbs is a little hard on him because whenever he makes mistakes, he kind of gets sent to the bench, and he mostly plays whenever Randall is sitting out. Speaking of Randall, he is not having the season that people have quite expected him to have this season. After him having an all-star level season last year, this season he's averaging like 19 and 10 on poor efficiency, as his field goal percentage and true shooting percentage has been the lowest it's ever been in the past 5 seasons, and he's averaging a career high in turnovers. He just has moments where he's looking a bit too lethargic on defense, or he'll over dribble on the shot clock and force up a bad shot, or try too hard to draw a foul. He'll even have moments where even 10 seconds, 5 seconds into the shot clock, he'll just settle for too many jump shots, whether it's like a step back jump shot or just a post fadeaway, when he could seek to attack the basket more. Not only would that get him more trips to the free throw line, but that can attract more double teams for him to make a play for some of his teammates on the perimeter. Now, don't get me wrong, these are shots that Randall has proven to hit in the past, and especially last season. But with teams giving him more defensive attention, with him being this team's primary scoring option and their best player, it has led to him being very inconsistent on offense, and as I said, very reliant on jump shots. And with Randall being this inconsistent, I only see 2 realities happening. Either the Knicks don't make the playoffs, or they're going to eventually seek to trade him. J Barrett's another one who's been pretty inconsistent this season as well. And though his percentages are lower than what they were last season, that little stretch of that he was going on where he was averaging a bit over 20 points in January and December was showing signs that he can be this team's next up-and-coming superstar. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's untouchable in the trade market for them, and they're going to really bank on his potential to grow as a player. But as of right now, he's still figuring it out. And they have Mitchell Robinson, whose advanced stats would suggest that he is a way better player than the box score shows, but he's an elite rim protector and finishes around the rim at a league-high rate of 79% field goal percentage. And to be honest with you, with the way that the Knicks are currently constructed, hard to really say whether they could use that primary or secondary go-to guy, or whether they should build around the potential of their young players. One player that I believe the Knicks should go for if the move is there is Deontay Murray of the San Antonio Spurs. Not only is he a young player that is probably potentially something to build around for the Knicks, but he would also be serving a playmaking role for them that they desperately need for the point guard position. And on top of that, he is also one of the better perimeter defenders in the league, as he is leading the league in steals per game. And though his outside jump shot could use some work from behind the arc, from mid-range and floater range, he's pretty exceptional, as he is a very crafty finisher around the basket and a solid rebounder at his position. And if they don't get Murray, another player that I think the Knicks should seek to acquire is Miles Turner. Even though you could argue that Mitchell Robinson and Miles Turner are at about the same level defensively, I'd give the slighter edge to Miles Turner, but like I said, it's up for debate. Offensively, I do believe that even though Miles Turner isn't quite the finisher around the basket that Mitchell Robinson is, or even a better rebounder than him, I do believe that he's still the better offensive option, just for the simple fact that he is able to space the floor out and hit free throws at a consistent rate. And he has another year on his contract. And if they can make a move for them, or if there's a move that's there, I say they do it. And on that note, y'all, if y'all enjoyed the video, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, bruh. It's been Swervo Hoops talking about some hoops, man. Don't forget to leave a comment down below on what teams you would like to see make a trade before the deadline comes. And even for the teams that I said in the video, you can mention if you have a few players that you believe that should go there instead of the players that I've said, or whether you agree or not. Who knows? You feel me? But with that being said, y'all be easy.